Israel on all of the other regional actors, so that they can, I guess, redefine the maps and reshape the maps in the way that they see fit, so they
like
can
an
move on.
imposing power. Yeah, sure.
And so that they can move on to the far graver threat that it threatens American hegemonic superpower status, which is China. And that's the reason why they're trying to do like this last ditch, before this last hurrah. It's weird to talk about it on these terms, but I think that's precisely what is going on. It's Israel doing, I'll use a German term here, its own Endsieg before they're done. And they're going to do as much territorial acquisition as they possibly can before, before they are restrained by the American government, whether that is the Trump administration or the Kamala Harris administration, who knows? But it will. I think that's what's happening, and they're trying to fucking make sure that they can set up a permanent occupation in at least like the northern Gaza Strip, and potentially the entirety of the Gaza Strip, as they will redesign it in the same way that they have in the West Bank. Inevitably, but they're just trying to do that to the best of their ability, and obviously that means ethnic cleansing of the entire population, 2.5 million people that live there, ethnic displacement as well.
I think that it's really problematic because I've seen that the behavior of Israel, I think, has really just multiplied the amount of actual anti-Semitism. Adolf has been making a comeback in a big way. It's crazy to see it. Absolutely fucking insane. I see tweets like this every single day. People that are just openly anti-Semitic or just calling somebody a Jew as let's not listen to them at all.
Yeah,
I think it's
underlying anti-Semitism. The underlying anti-Semitism has always existed in America. Yeah. The reason why it's now getting more prominence is, one, because Twitter is a right-wing shithole and Elon Musk doesn't give a fuck or likes that. I mean, he follows literal Nazi accounts that talk about how we must protect doing the 14 words.
14 letters, yeah.
Yes. So I think that's part of the reason, and the other part of the reason is because Israel, not dissimilar to ISIS, claims that they're doing this for Judaism, and that they claim falsely that they represent the interests of all Jews around the planet. They say that every Jew is of one mind, that they are monolithic in their understanding of Israel. Everyone is a Zionist. Everyone wants Israel to exist, and everyone wants Israel to exist in the violent ways in which it has to exist as a demographic majority Jewish country. Now, in order to maintain a demographic majority like this, you have to literally sometimes eliminate people that are maybe growing in population size. And Israel can only do this as it maintains a violent apartheid regime in the West Bank, and is now rebuild or redesigning Gaza in its own interest in doing full-blown ethnic displacement in Gaza. The problem is, they claim that they're doing this for Judaism, and that's just wrong. They're not doing this for Judaism.
Well, they're using it as a tool. That's really what it is.
There is no part of Jewish culture or Jewish theology that or a theological understanding that says that Israel has to exist in this way that it does. As a matter of fact, there is actually a theological understanding under Judaism that Jews cannot have a nation state until the Messiah comes back. So that's the reason why you see so many of these ultra-Orthodox Jews in pro-Palestinian demonstrations that are side by side with the Palestinians criticizing the state of Israel.
It's like blasphemy.
Yeah, there are a shit ton. There are a shit ton of anti-Zionist Jews that are prominent members of the resistance against Israel. I have Jewish fans in Israel who are anti-Zionist living in Israel, and I analyze that in the same way that I analyze my own existence in America. I do not agree with American imperialism. I think it's awful, and I work every day to try to get others to recognize that reality. And having said that, the most prominent displays of Israel and the most prominent defenses of Israel are always in mainstream media, are always associated with Judaism. That's why you hear the likes of Jake Tapper and many other anchors, for example, say criticizing Israel is anti-Semitic. I can't believe that you're an anti-Zionist. You're anti-Semitic. You want Israel to be destroyed. You want all the Jews that live in Israel to die. This is false, and it's a smear, and it no longer works. But because Israel is constantly portraying itself as a Jewish state, and because Israel constantly claims that they're doing all this,
I think that there's that. That's also a very big component. There is the moral authority. Like we're killing you for your own good.
Yeah. So because they're doing this, and because they're using religion as a justification, I mean, people. What are people to assume, especially if you've never been around a Jewish person, and you've maybe heard that, like, oh, Jews control the media, like someone just said that, right, in your vicinity, and you internalize that, or you heard that, and then you see Jake Tapper being like, Israel's doing this for Judaism, and if you look at this carnage and don't think that it's unacceptable, then you yourself are anti-Semitic. Yeah, if you're a guy living in fucking Arkansas, you're gonna be like, wait a minute, maybe Jews do control the media. And that's how anti-Semitism grows in the Western, in Western society. There's already an underlying, like, always endless amount of anti-Semitism that people think about on a day-to-day basis. But this gives them justification. And a lot of charlatans take advantage of the situation to promote anti-Semitic conspiracies because they care more about, like, you know, shitting on Jewish people than actually criticizing the state of Israel.
Oh, I see that a lot. A lot of people that are against Israel in quotes, but you know, every person that's a Jew is Israeli.
Yeah,
no, I think
but it's the same argument on both sides, and that's what's really interesting.
Están rompiendo las pelotas con la maderita,
The
boludo.
difference between Jake Tapper saying all Jews are Zionists, therefore Israel's anti-Semitic, is no different than a Nazi saying all Jews are Zionists, and therefore, you know, Israel is the Jewish state. And they want to fucking destroy Israel. There is no difference in the fundamentals of that argument. Both sides, whether they are woke or not woke on the issue, still think that all Jews are Zionists.
Man, isn't that something? Yeah. I don't know what, like, I think that it's so fucking annoying and weird that it plays that big of a role in conversations because we have people that can't afford healthcare. I think it's ridiculous.
Yes.
I'm very disappointed about it, but you know, like, what do you do, right?
Yes, but also something to remember, something to consider is that regardless of what people say, I mean, this is why I don't consider criticism of Saudi Arabia to be inherently Islamophobic. There's a difference, however. Like, criticizing Saudi Arabia for doing a genocide in Yemen, or criticizing Saudi Arabia for, again, being a sovereign nation state that is at the heel of the United States of America, that is a willing participant of American empire, therefore is not politically constrained in similar ways that, like, other forces that are dominated by American empire, still maintaining, you know, some aspects of religious theocracy in their own governance, is an appropriate criticism of Saudi Arabia. You can do that without saying Muslims are, you know, exhibiting an inferior culture. You can say that about the UAE. You can say that about many of these other countries, whether it's Qatar or UAE or Saudi Arabia, Oman, and the like. That's the difference between, you know, monolithizing the entirety of the region versus individually dissecting the many ways in which some of our allies in the region are engaging in religious fundamentalism in their internal governance.
It's awful, man. Like, it's shocking to me that so many people buy into it and so many people still do it. Like, I am amazed, like, here in the U.S., it feels like people are becoming more religious. I think that people over there,
No.
You don't think so?
No, absolutely not.
I think religion's been coming back a lot recently.
No, I don't think so. I look at overall trends. I look at overall trends, like, it's more in your face with, like, people being like, oh, I love religion or whatever, but no.
Yeah.
Overall trends show that that religious support is hemorrhaging in all of our religious institutions in this country. It's something that like people are genuinely fearful of, at least those in power, those who stand to gain. But no, American religiosity has gone down tremendously. And that trend is the same everywhere around the world, as a matter of fact. The only places where it's not the same, the only places where like there are more religious people or more fundamentalist people are oftentimes areas of conflict, like areas that are in direct conflict, areas that are being dominated. In those places, like
people
even
use
if there
religion
is
as the cultural rallying point. I think that's what happens, and
Yes.
then they use the religion to have a, like this is like how you're establishing the values. Because I mean, the truth is, right? Like you are going to have your like a culture is going to be like we are more influenced by like let's say Christianity than China is or than Saudi Arabia is, right? We're like
China's not religious at all.
Exactly, right? And so like that's what I'm saying. And so like of course there's going to be like a relation there. And so that it makes sense why people would use that, but there's a lot of misuse of it. I don't think that religion's like bad like entirely, but I feel like a lot of people use it as a weapon. And
Absolutely. No, that's the way I see
what
it.
really and that's what really scares me the most. And it scares me a lot with like I mean, we went through like 20 years of this with like George Bush and like Obama with the this like the Middle Eastern adventures, right? Of like, George Bush saying that God told him that like he was supposed to go over there. It's fucking insane. Absolutely batshit crazy. And so I am very, very like afraid of that. I'm very worrisome of that. And that's where I think a lot of my distrust comes from with like any sort of culture that prioritizes religion as like a cultural like rallying point, is that I just feel like a lot of the ideas that they have are really bad.
Yeah. So I don't disagree with religious fundamentalism on principle.
Yeah.
I agree that it is a bad thing, and there is never a moment where I've said that like religious fundamentalism is appropriate. I just simply recognize that it is nowhere near the most devastating aspect of like any kind of society if they are currently in the process of being wiped out. That's just my analysis on it. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll give you this. I think Israel's worse than Palestine. How about that? Is that good?
I mean, yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I mean, far worse in terms of what kind of power it has, because
Sure.
I think we understand, right, that if you are like, if I'm 6'4", 225 pounds on a good day, okay?
Yep.
If I were to go and beat the shit out of kindergartners, like, I would be held responsible. If a kindergartner in the process punched me back and I said, ow, you hit me, now I'm going to go beat the shit out of your family members with my, and maybe even use my guns on them, you'd be like, this man is a monster, put him in jail immediately, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but when Israel does it, and you turn around and you go, what about the vibes of those kindergartners, though? Did they deserve it? Maybe they do deserve it. Maybe they had some bad opinions. Maybe they called him Baldy or something. Then obviously it would be seen as like even if I was interested or not interested, even if I could recognize right from wrong, it would come across to onlookers that I was like justifying some of the some of the things that the much larger party in this circumstance, me, did to the kindergartners.
I really hope that Palestine can be free. I don't think that I don't think it's going to go the way you think it will. I don't.
What do you mean?
I think that with continuing to control people with like religious fundamentalism. I think that's going to continue. I don't think that the moment that like they get out from under Israel, they're going to just like be okay with all of these other types of like identities. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
but
that's never happened, is what I'm trying to tell you. Like that's never even been able to be implemented in terms of like Palestinian history. So much so that there's never been a moment in Palestinian history where there's like any sort of sovereignty. So we can't make that we can't make that assumption because that has never even throughout Palestinian history ever existed.
I agree with you. And I think that, I have an assumption. I think you also probably have an assumption. But I think that we both agree that it would be good to find out who's right.
I mean, sure, but once again, regardless of, there's two different things that I want to make very clear here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Regardless of whether Palestinian people will, let's say tomorrow, Palestine is emancipated and they have full-blown sovereignty. And they decide to be religiously, like, very right-wing, very fundamentalist. I still think that is infinitely better than the current genocide that is going on. Would you agree with that?
Is it better? Well, I mean, like, if they're going in there and they're killing other people instead, I could see arguments for being...
No. I'm saying, like, they are being very restrictive towards gay Palestinians. Let's say tomorrow, Palestine is a sovereign state. And as a sovereign state tomorrow, they're no longer being genocided. And in the, when they are rebuilding, Palestine is a sovereign nation state. They are very homophobic. They're very transphobic. They're like really harming gay people and trans people in Palestine. They're like arresting them. I still think that, while still inappropriate, would be a far greater outcome than being completely wiped out and being completely genocided. I don't think that is going to be the outcome. But regardless, I want to make it very clear. I think that, yes, no genocide is better than, any kind of genocide.
We're not making a genocide tier list. I get that. I understand. My point is that I agree with you. I just don't think that I don't like their culture either, right? I find it to be problematic as well. And that's why I struggle. By the way,
the people that we were talking about in terms of Palestinians are like, they are some of the most educated per capita population in spite of everything else, just for the record. Like, I don't know if you knew this or not, but Palestinians are literally some of the most educated people on the planet, like per capita.
I hope so. I mean,
I hope so. I mean, there's like,
sorry,
Palestinian educational attainment is in spite of being genocided by Israel, in spite of living under Israeli occupation, is incredibly high. They have a tremendous amount of, obviously a tremendous amount of struggles and tremendous amount of hurdles to go through, but the status of education in Palestine is that 96.3% of the population is literate. It's higher than like the high human development category average, as in Palestinian society as a whole is like has a higher literacy rating than developed nations.
That's really good. That's great.
Yeah. So like, I don't think that these are the religious fundamentalist people that you think that they are, is what I'm trying to explain.
I don't think that, I think there were a lot of people that were religious and also very well educated that can do very bad things. I don't think that, like, the more educated you are, like, I see what you're saying. And I think that you definitely do have an argument with it, but I'm not sure.
Do you understand why, like, cultural inferiority arguments end up, like, leading you astray in this subject matter? Because now that I've told you the literacy rate being higher in Palestine, in the Palestinian population, now you're saying, well, they can be literate and still fundamentalist, but, like, there isn't evidence of this reality of, like, broad, sweeping fundamentalism in Palestinian existence at all. If you are pointing to Hamas, which is a Islamist fundamentalist organization that started off as a charity that became this like violent resistance group, in terms of their governance, if that's what you're pointing to, once again, the situation is very different for the broader Palestinian society, because that is the only group that has successfully been able to thwart Israeli incursions, further Israeli incursions. That is the reason why they are the domineering group. Israel killed all the fucking secular leadership so consistently, or turned it into, like the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, turned it into its own security apparatus, but with a Palestinian face. So from the calculation of the Palestinians, they're like, okay, these guys are fucking, these guys are religious, but they're also the only people defending us.
It's the devil, you know. I understand the
It's
argument.
not even the devil. They see it as like, these are the only people that are fighting back against the country that is, bombing my house.
I understand that. And I can see their point of view. I just think that they're still bad. I do. I think it's bad to prosecute people and to kill them based off of their identity.
Okay, there's no disagreement. There's no disagreement with what you're saying.
Of course.
The difference, however, is that again,
go ahead.
Palestinian internal governance has always existed within the confines of being a colonial entity. They've never had full-blown sovereignty, so their internal affairs have to always be analyzed. Well, one, Palestinians are not of one mind, right? So that's number one. And number two is that we are talking about, especially if we're talking about the Gaza Strip, we're talking about people that are majority underage. Majority. The majority of the Gaza Strip is under the age of 18. So, like, we're talking about killing teenagers for the most part. We're talking about killing kids, because that's what's going on. So, like, their internal governance or what has happened in Palestinian society, it bears no basis in the outcome. Israel's killing them whether they're gay. Israel's killing them whether they're straight or whether they're fundamentalists or not. Palestinians could be the wokest, okay? Palestinians could be making fucking video games with like only trans representation, and Israel would still be killing them, okay? That's the reason why it doesn't matter in this conversation whether they would engage in any sort of like internal governance post-emancipation that is like homophobic or not.
I think that it really, I think that they should be able to make that decision themselves, right? Like, if they want to do that, that's fine. Like, they're a sovereign nation, or they should be a sovereign nation. They should be able to do that. I just don't like the cultural...
¡Ay, boludo!
I
Pero me
do
vengo a
actually
quedar
think that these cultures are, in a lot of cases, worse. And I think that there are a lot of points of difference there, whether it's about how you can speak up against the government, how you can resist different types of control,
But there is no government. Like, again... Remember what I told you about like the Espionage Act during World War II and like during Cold War, all of these like laws that were created to dominate American people for having a difference in opinion?
Sure, but all those are bad. Like, that's
I
my
understand,
point, though,
but
right?
it's because it was born out of necessity in the minds of those who were responsible for the government. You yourself are at odds with that, but ultimately you still said, maybe because you didn't know this, you still said that like America is a far superior culture. The point is, it has nothing to do with like. The point is, it has nothing to do with like a culture at all, and everything to do with the material conditions that you're subjected to. That's my argument, and that at least throughout history, societies that have been allowed to foster, allowed to prosper, have inevitably had these struggles that are born out of a genuine need for people that want equality. And that's it. That's the reason why. And there's always going to be resistance from others inside of said societies every step of the way. But in order for you to analyze this, you have to look at Palestinians in the same exact way that you look at your fellow Americans, because there is no difference. Ultimately, they're still, at the end of the day, they're still human beings. And some of them are gay, some of them are trans, and they all want equality, they all want a fucking job, they all want shelter, and they all, want to play WoW Classic over retail.
Right. I of course. I agree with you about all of those things, except for I don't know if all of them want equality. I do think that some of those people do actually hold very regressive views, the same as the way that we have people.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right?
But you have to, you have to analyze broader Palestinian society in the exact same way. With that, the moment that you are equipped with the understanding that they are no different than Americans, okay? Some are going to be restrictive. Some are going to believe fucking insane shit. Some are going to believe insane shit in the other direction. Like some are going to want to make Concord again. Okay. Some Palestinians are going to be like, I want to make Concord, but more gay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is just the reality. There are people with a diversity of opinion. They're no different than you and I in terms of their needs, in terms of like the way, in terms of what they want for themselves. And that friction is always going to exist in every society. And when you are no longer shackled by the restrictions of existing under a colonial occupation, you will be able to move society forward by fighting. There's going to be struggles. There's always going to be struggles every step of the way. But you have to understand that America was able to get to this point after years and years of a lot of revolutionary figures fighting for it. And Palestinians have never had that opportunity because they've always been dominated by a far, far greater military force. And that force has surveilled every aspect of their lives. That force has dominated every aspect of their lives. I'll give you one example, like in terms of queer phobia, right?
Sure.
Israel literally will blackmail gay Palestinians. They will try to create sexual material, okay, of gay Palestinians in an effort to turn them into confidential informants for the state of Israel. Like, that's not exactly very pro-gay, is it? It's not.
Oh, Israel's awful. Yeah, for sure.
No, but that's my point. Ultimately, just like Israeli bombs do not make a distinction between gay Palestinians and straight Palestinians who are homophobic or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, these guys have never been able to get to a point where they have any sort of civil governance whatsoever, so they can rebel against it internally. But remember, it's always the people that are still Palestinians that will be rebelling against whatever form of governance they inevitably create, if they are ever to be free.
It's hard to say. I mean, like, my expectations of things changing massively are very low. I think that what you're saying could be true, and I hope that we can find out. But I don't know, man. I mean, I don't see how it just changes in like that big way. I don't see it happening.
What are you talking about? Like the full-scale genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, or are you talking about Palestinians becoming?
I was referring to Palestinians, becoming more like liberal, I guess you would say, right? And not having these like cultural expectations, because I feel like, kind of like by what you were saying, right, is like blackmailing gay Palestinians. Well, why is it a blackmail, right? Well, because they can be punished and hurt for having those viewpoints. And so that's at least like my opinion on it. I don't know, and I don't like that culture. I do think that to a certain degree, every individual person is going to be different. But if you're looking at what a government does in the same way that people criticize like America and they're really criticizing the government, I think you can criticize Palestine or Saudi Arabia or any other country. And,
I'm letting you know once again, there's no aspect of Palestinian quote unquote culture that revolves around like dominating gay Palestinians or anything like that.
So do you think that like at a certain point, if it doesn't come from there, where did it come from?
What do you mean, homophobia in general?
Yeah, where did it
I think that, yes, I think that religious social conditioning plays a role in uplifting bigoted attitudes towards people that are... Yeah, I know, but it's no different. The problem here is it is that aspect of it is reactionary conservatism. It's no different in Palestine as it is in the United States of America. The only reason why it manifests, or the only reason why it takes it can be dealt with by those in terms of like the civil governance or anything like that is specifically a direct consequence of being a victim of colonial domination. And those guys are the ones that happen to be fighting back against Israel tooth and nail. But once again, it doesn't matter. Just like I celebrate the American accomplishments in World War II, it doesn't change that dynamic that America was incredibly homophobic back then. You know what I mean?
They were. True.
It was. They were merkin. And they, by the way, America still has gay panic laws and things of that nature that allows people to be able to potentially kill their partners. I mean, let's see what the latest is on the gay panic, trans panic defense bans now.
Oh, I'm sure there's all kinds of like stupid stuff like that.
And
sure.
Under no circumstance would I ever advocate or say like, well, America is an inferior culture, and that's why like.
Well, I think that aspect of our culture is inferior. I do. I think it is inferior. I think it's worse, and I think we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. We should hold everybody to a higher standard. I don't really see how, like, being a developing country, I don't see the correlation between, if a country is like being occupied or something like that, that's going to make them more homophobic. I don't really see how.
Wait, how do you not see that? Well, it's entirely. It's not even being occupied. You understand, right? Like it's
whatever word you want to use.
It's what material conditions look like when you are occupied. Mm-hmm. That's why I gave the example of the Westboro Baptist Church. Those guys are not doing ISIS-style executions of gay people because they live in America. If they were born and living in another part of the world, and if they were living in America, I guess like post-nuclear Holocaust or something, they would absolutely be doing that. It's entirely about what your immediate surroundings look like. That's my point. That's it. They're exhibiting the same kind of religious fundamentalism. The only difference is there is no greater outside force that is like destroyed the United States of America in its entirety, and therefore they can just like fucking fulfill their violent desires whichever way they see fit. That's the only difference here.
It's very hard to know like what somebody would do if they were born into another another country, right? It's like would people in Palestine?
That's why I said they would be teleported like with the same and with the same exact mentality. There is no way. There is, of course, and that, my friend, is you recognizing that we are a product of our material conditions.
What you just said right there.
Extent.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's it. That's my point. Like, that is precisely what I'm saying.
I can see what you're saying, and I think that definitely that does play a part. But I think that also a culture is created by a government, and you can look at the way the government applies any sort of rules. And I think that it is very easy to say that some rules are unfair and they are inferior to others. I do not think this is a problematic thing to say. And I don't like the idea of the cultural relativity. I don't think that that really exists in a lot of cases. And I feel like, yes, of course, you're going to have people that will take advantage of, oh, well, this asshole warlord guy is coming in and he's going to, save us, but he's also a bad person. Yes, of course that's going to happen, right? But at the same time, I don't think that's the only point of it. I think that if you do have a law, and then also, while that warlord is in charge, that culture, that warlord or that group of people that is bad, while that's around, is inferior. Now, I feel like a lot of this is about like the inferiority thing. To me, the word isn't really that important. It's mainly just like there are ideas that I think are just objectively worse. Like, for example, like not letting people express their identity for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. I think that's just an objectively worse viewpoint, and anybody who is trying to champion that viewpoint is a bad person. It's just you're doing a bad thing, and there's like no justification for it. There's no like I can see people that like don't actively fight against it because like you know for whatever reason, right? There could be 50 different reasons, but I do think it's always bad. It's bad every single time. And
yes, I think suppression of people's suppression of people's like expression is not a good thing. Yes, it is a bad thing. But again, there is a difference between doing it in a developed nation that does not have like any sort of outside forces dominating it versus a country that has never even been allowed to be a country.
Well, here's the way I see it.
Would you say that there is not a distinction there? Like, would you say that?
I don't see a correlation between... I don't understand the correlation between suppressing gay people and being able to be like another country that's like involving you. Like, I don't... Or like attacking you.
I will describe this once again.
Okay.
African tribal existence, okay, and their internal affairs played no basis in chattel slavery, although it was used as a justification for it, that these were barbaric people, that these were not even human. You want this? Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, but it was bad, right? I mean, like, what they were doing there was like, still bad. It doesn't justify the bad behavior. No, I don't think it's justified. No.
But ultimately, there is still a far greater evil here, which is robbing people of their homes and stripping them away, you know, mass rapes, mass subjugation, humiliation, chattel slavery. Mm-hmm. So when historians look to this, when historians look at chattel slavery, they don't analyze the conditions of African tribes unless they are a different kind of historian that may or may not be trying to justify chattel slavery. And the same goes for any kind of colonial domination. Some of these opinions are more permissible in polite society than others. Mm-hmm. The reason why I'm using chattel slavery is because everybody recognizes right from wrong.
Yeah, sure.
Like South Africa, apartheid South Africa, the idea that black people were inferior in apartheid South Africa, I'm sure people probably made similar, I know for a fact that they made similar arguments in apartheid South Africa where they were like, well, black people are, you know, violent and barbaric, and why do you care about this one little country of South Africa just because it's being controlled by white people? Like, but when black people came into power, okay, when apartheid South Africa, when the apartheid was lifted and they came into power, obviously there was still an economic apartheid, but the notion that they were going to be barbaric did not occur at all. The idea that they were going to be dominating and barbaric and inferior in their governance, that did not happen.
I don't see why, like, why is it so hard to just acknowledge that certain things that people do are bad? Like, it's really not. It's not complicated.
I'm acknowledging that religious fundamentalism is bad. I'm also telling you that it plays no role in the far greater evil, because the difference between killing 10 gay people and killing 100,000 gay people is killing 100,000 gay people is worse, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay, well then that's the point. That's the point I'm making, which is that Israel is killing not only 100,000 gay people, but just every fucking straight person as well. They don't care who they're killing. And that is the reason why I don't spend a lot of time being like, well, the Palestinians have never actually shown me that they deserve emancipation because they're not like super woke about gay people.
Yeah.
There's no basis in this. Like, I don't care.
I don't want to see
when I analyze the situation in World War II, I don't look at like, the way that like how German Jews thought about, like, what German Jews thought about like gay people. I don't really care.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. To me, I think that it's very easy to just acknowledge that certain things are bad. Like, for example, like if they're treating people this way, It is a bad thing, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that they should be killed for it, right? Of course not.
Yeah,
No.
and they're not being killed for it
Obviously
anyway.
not.
That's just like, that is only the
Right.
justification that Israel tries to use whenever people are countering this kind of argument with like, hey man, genocide is wrong. And they'll be like, oh, well, Israel would kill you if you, Palestine would kill you if you were gay in Gaza, which, by the way, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there's a very famous video of a trans activist that went to Gaza and literally engaged in humanitarian aid in Gaza. And obviously they were not like, oh, you're trans, we're going to kill you. They were like, oh, thank you for your fucking humanitarian aid. They don't give a shit. Like, it's the same as any other kind of person. I talked to a teenager from Yemen, okay, who everyone called, myself included, called Timothy Charlemagne, or Chalamet.
Is that the One Piece one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this kid is like, I think he was like 19 at the time when I talked to him. Which means that for most of his life, he has withstood genocide, right? Like, he is a person whose only experience is like, it's literally like talking to fucking Anne Frank, basically, okay? Being able to talk to Anne Frank in real time. That's all he's known is death and destruction of his home, right? With American bombs.
But he's not getting killed by gay people, right? He's not getting killed. Like, if he's talking about, like,
we're not even talking about gay people.
America.
I'm going to bring up something important here. First of all, he wasn't Houthi. I asked him. He was like, I'm not. Which many people said, oh, he's hiding it. He's PR trained, which is really funny to say about like some random fucking dude who can't even speak English. Like, he doesn't give a fuck if people call him anti-Semitic. And I asked him, like, what do you think about Jewish people? What if I were to tell you that, like, Jewish people are leading the anti-Zionist movement in America? And he was like, that's great. I love them. That's awesome. Anyone who's against Israel is my friend. Now, that might have been one of the first instances where this person ever even heard that Jewish people were against the state of Israel. Okay? But his immediate reaction was, his immediate reaction was, that's great. Love that. I'm a big fan of that. Something along those lines. And the reason for that is because there is a far greater problem that people care about. And that is Israel's complete domination over the region, America's complete domination by way of utilizing Israel over the region. That's all they care about. If that was removed from the equation, okay, these people, some of them would absolutely be right-wing. Some of them would absolutely be like, oh, no, I still don't fucking, I don't fuck with gay people. Fuck those guys. I want to kill them. And other people would say, I'm gay. I fought alongside you. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's just how human beings are. That's just how that's how society ends up evolving to a point that we take for granted. That becomes more understanding. It's not easy.
I think that's what happens over time. It is, but I think it's easy to say that where it is right now isn't good. It's not good. Yeah. And of course, only
if you recognize like where this hostility stems from, or why it's left unexamined. Rather, the hostility that we assume these people have is like, the reason why I asked them about the like Jewish anti-Zionists was because even my assumption is that, like, the Houthis, for example, literally have a banner that says "Curse the Jews," right?
Yeah.
Like, so I was very curious as to see like how this person would react to something that he might not have even ever considered, and that's the point, which is that, like, people have the capacity to change once they learn new information. They're not ever going to be firmly planted and be of one mind. Most people have a tendency to be empathetic to other people. They want to collaborate with other people. We're a social animal. It's in our nature to be as collaborative with others as possible. And that's why I don't believe that anyone is like intrinsically homophobic or intrinsically queerphobic. Not that it matters in this circumstance, because the far larger problem is still always going to be genocide.
Yeah, no, I could see the genocide being worse. Yeah, sure. I could definitely see that. I don't like the I don't like the idea that culture is equivalent to ours. I think it is very problematic. I think it's very bad. I don't think it should be judged the same way. It doesn't mean I'm not sympathetic to them. Of course, right? Of course it's bad this happens. But whenever there is a state that's upholding something that is killing groups of people based off of their identity, or a group of people that's doing that, whether it's a government or some sort of like regime or anything like that, I think it's very easy to say that that's bad. I don't think that saying that, like different types of persecution is for one reason or another, like okay because they're being being occupied in some way or another, right? I don't really see how these two things are related because they're not being occupied by gay people. They're not being occupied by trans people. They're being occupied by Israelis. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly,
like if you're
which is why they're
if
not
you're
like,
hating gay people and you're making that against the law.
no,
It has
that's
nothing to
a
do
good
with it.
point, Asmund. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's why they're not like, if you think right now or at any point, Hamas
Yeah.
is like, we really got to fucking deal with these homosexuals in our ranks. Like, you're out of your mind. That's not what's going on at all.
I don't think that's the case at all. Of course not.
Okay, so
But
then
when the dust
you know.
settles, when the dust settles, and then they start killing gay people, what are you going to say?
Okay, but you can't hypothesize a future where they're gonna do that when there is no fucking like evidence that they're going to do that in a free and a completely emancipated sovereign nation state. That's what my point. The assumption that they're gonna do that is the bigotry. That is where we're at odds. The assumption that they're gonna do that immediately, it almost feels like they want to be free just so they can kill the gay Palestinians, which is a ridiculous fucking assumption.
Not. Of course, that's not the reason.
Okay, but you understand that, like,
free to kill all the gay people. Of course not. But like, I mean, it's an openly stated thing with a lot of these cases, even inside of any sort of other culture. There are many cultures that are openly stated to be against people of different gender identities. This isn't some sort of like unique monopoly that Palestine has over this. I think it's true in many cases.
But Palestine has never. But given the fact that there has never been a sovereign national Palestinian state, making this inference is ridiculous. Is my point. It's like saying that if Texas were to exist on its own, that they would start fucking executing gay people and enslave black people again. Except there has been a state, or it wasn't a sovereign state, but there has been an instance where, Texas did actually fight hard to enslave black people and continue to enslave black people. That's why we have Juneteenth, which is
right.
Far after the point of abolition, where they still maintain the practice of chattel slavery. So even then, there's more evidence that Texas might potentially do that, as opposed to Palestinian statehood, which has never been a form of governance that has had a moment to behave in the homophobic ways in which we assume they will. And ultimately, once again, they would still be dominating gay Palestinians. And this is a concept that a lot of Americans don't understand. They think like, a lot of people used to say this about ISIS. They're like, oh, they're throwing gay people off the roofs because Muslims are so Islamophobic. I'm like, bitch, the gay people are Muslim. Like, who do you think they're throwing off the roofs? They're not throwing white American gays off the roofs. They're throwing Muslims. They're throwing other Arabs that are gay off the roofs, which is like, something that is at odds with the way that people understand, Islam and the Muslim world, and think like, no, all Muslims love this shit. It's like, well, I don't think the gay dude who is Muslim loved being thrown off the roof. I think he probably hated that in that moment.
I bet he did. I think so. You're right. And I think that criticism of that isn't really Islam. I don't think it really has a lot to do with Islam, right?
It has nothing to do with Islam. And it has nothing to do with culture in general. It has everything to do with this like fucking insane, militant, rabid, psychopathic colonial apparatus that was trying to restore the image of the caliphate in whatever they saw fit.
The way that people see gender identity and the way that they treat them is absolutely part of their culture. And it's part of our culture too. It's part of everybody's culture.
It's not necessarily true. I don't think when you say it's a part of their culture, you make it seem like it is an intractable quality. It's a quality that cannot change, or it's a quality that definitely exists across the board as a monolithic force. That is not the case. That's my point.
Of course, nothing's monolithic, right? Nothing is ever going to be monolithic. The same within the U.S. or anything like that. But I think it's a viewpoint that a lot of people have, and it's the same as here. There's a lot of people that have viewpoints about that here. And guess what? Our laws reflect the viewpoints that a lot of people have. And so what's going to happen in Palestine? I don't know. When they get
I don't think our laws reflect a lot of the people's viewpoints. Because if that was the case, you wouldn't have been so shocked about Texas BDS laws. Like, I don't think it's your viewpoint. I think if you were to sit down every person in Texas, they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is unacceptable.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right about that. I mean, there are some of them that get through. You are right. But I do think that in general, the laws do have a rough estimation to what the people's values are.
I don't,
like, not
again, we're talking about abortion bans, for example. Abortion bans. That's not the viewpoint of the overwhelming majority of people that are now subjected to abortion bans. Governments do not operate at the behest of their citizens, even in democracies, even in quote-unquote theoretical democracies like the United States of America. So, no, that is not the case. And people always are fighting against their governments in order to, at the domestic level, get the equality that they fight long and hard for. The problem, however, with Palestinian society is that they've never had a fucking functioning sovereign state and a government to begin with. And even if they did, the assumption that they would be homophobic is ridiculous because, once again, there is no historical reference point for this. And beyond that,
isn't it
even if they did have a homophobic government,
it's against the law now, right?
But even if they had a homophobic government, it's against the law is meaningless in this circumstance. What is the law? There has never been a sovereign state in this situation. Palestinians, like I said, in Gaza, are operated under Hamas rule, right? Palestinians in Gaza are operated under Hamas rule. Palestinian Authority legalized gay marriage decades before then. But in 2005, Hamas rule came into power after America tried to implement voting. Okay, George W. Bush on his way out was like, well, let's do voting in Palestine. Palestinian Authority said, let's not do that. We are not ready for it. We'll get fucking owned. Because at that point, Palestinian people, both in the West Bank and certainly in the Gaza Strip, were viewing the Palestinian Authority as exactly what it is, a CIA-backed institution that was working at the behest of the Israeli state as a part of its security apparatus. So they were very unpopular. So what happened? Hamas came in and were like, we're Muslim as fuck. We love Islam. We are honest because of our Islamic background. And we are the only group that is actually violently resisting against the Israeli apartheid. We are going to run a anti-corruption campaign, which is what they did. And just like the prediction of the Fatah Party, which is a secular party, which is the part of the Palestinian Authority, they were right. Hamas did win. Then America said, let's do a fucking coup d'etat. Fuck it. Take over the Strip regardless. Hamas actually won that battle. And basically, the rest is history. They have been the de facto government.
Don't you think the fact they won the vote matters? Like, if the people are voting for the people that want to oppress people based off of their identity, I think that to a certain extent, that does infer a degree of like what people think.
I have two problems here. I just told you that 50% of the population of Palestine and Gaza Strip is under the age of 18. None of them fucking voted for Hamas, okay? Because they weren't alive. That's number one. Number two, you said you voted for Donald Trump in the past, in 2016.
I did.
Okay, why did you vote for Donald Trump?
I just didn't really like Hillary Clinton.
There you go. Turns out people have many different motivations for voting for one particular party over the other, and it doesn't have to be Islamist fundamentalism that they believe in. So that's my point. Because they're human beings with a shit ton of different attitudes and different opinions. If they see the dominating party of Fatah as a party that is completely captured by Israeli security apparatus that is working at the behest of this state that is destroying their lives, they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to go with the other guy, just like you went with Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. So, but it doesn't even matter because most of those people that fucking voted for Hamas are dead. They don't even exist anymore. And it doesn't matter because Hamas is still the governing party because there's not a real democracy there. They are a militant force that is dominating the Gaza Strip, that is simultaneously fighting against the Israeli state. So I hope that this helps clear your understanding of the way in which Palestinians live in the Gaza Strip, and how this has nothing to do with their internal affairs or their government, or how they view the world, or how they view gay people at all.
I get it. I think that, and I do hope that they get their independence. I think that whenever they do, they're probably going to do the same thing that Hamas did to gay people before.
No, they were not. But I just told you. I told you that. Hold on. Let's look this up real quick.
Go ahead.
Like, if that was the case, which is such a funny argument that we're having over like a group of individuals that are being genocided anyway. Like, I don't give a fuck if they literally were straight up jailing every homosexual person in the Gaza Strip. I still think that the genocide is inappropriate and completely unjustifiable. But yes.
Well, two things can be bad, right?
What?
I mean, two things can be bad. It's not like only one thing can be bad. Like, obviously it's bad.
West Bank, it's been legal technically since the annexation, but since 1951. They adopted the Jordanian Penal Code of 1951 in the West Bank.
Supongo que el lanzamiento impresionante de ese cohete significa que llegamos demasiado tarde. Parece que la cápsula que contiene a nuestro amado Pepsi va a bordo de...
Mm.